Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this review, we are looking at the Revoltech Amazing Yamaguchi All Might from My Hero Academia. I still haven't watched the show. It's on my list. I've got a list about 1,000 titles long at this point. Haven't had time. Anyway, lots of you guys have asked me to review more Revoltech. Lots of you have asked me to review this figure specifically. So, thanks to Big Bad Toy Store, I am able to review this. I put a call in. They sent a review sample. Here it is. If you guys want to check out Big Bad Toy Store, there's a link in the description below for this guy specifically. Can't say how long he'll be in stock. I don't know how many they have, but as of the time of filming, he is in stock, and you can check him out at the link in the description below. So, this guy, there's some good, some bad as far as Revoltech stuff goes. Obviously, I'm going to keep my personal opinions about Revoltech. I'll probably mention them, but that's not going to affect the review because I understand what the figure is supposed to do and be. So, let's go ahead and get him off the stand and take a closer look. Okay, before we look at the figure, I'll show you my package really quickly. It does have the older window style box. Nice figure pose on the side, some artwork on the back. I like it a whole bunch. Very colorful, very fun. Way more appealing than the Thor packaging we looked at just the other day. This is like way too much over the top color and stuff, but I think that's better. So not too much in a bad way. But definitely a lot of color going on here. I like it. It's a nice package. If you're displaying stuff in the box, you might like that one. All right, now for those of you who might be new to my channel, when I mention the thing about my feelings about Revoltech, it's just usually that the exaggerated articulation, the heavy cuts and things don't usually give you enough benefit to be justifiable because they're so ugly most of the time. That's not to say they can't do it right. They just tend to be uglier than they need to be. That's my biggest gripe. But okay, let's get into it. This guy stands about 7.5 inches, not counting his hair thingies. That's going to be about 19 centimeters. Here he is up against a Marvel Legends Darwin. Definitely pretty big there. I'd say it's probably out of scale. I think he's not supposed to be exceptionally large, but maybe he is. Like I said, I haven't watched the show. Here he is with a McFarlane Batman, still pretty damn big. And then here he is with a Marvel Select Captain America. That's about the same size. So if he's supposed to be normal human sized, he is Marvel Select scale. He's huge. If he's bigger than normal, then he's probably Marvel Legends scale. Alright, so let's do a quick question of the day. I'm going to ask this one again because different viewers for different videos. Where do you guys fall on the articulation versus aesthetic balance, that compromise? Will you sacrifice basically any amount of good-looking figureness to have really good articulation, or do you want it to look good first and then be able to pose? For me, I'd say it's about a 50-50. I want my figures to pose, especially to be able to hit iconic poses, like for, I don't know, Spider-Man has to be extra flexible, Ryu and Ken need to be able to do their poses for the game moves, things like that, but they still need to look good doing it. And look good pretty much all the time, so it has to be a very delicate balance. For me, these guys just push it way too far in one direction, which would be towards the articulation, which obviously that's a total personal preference. My argument is, which is more objective, is that they just don't give you enough of that for the sacrifice in the aesthetic. And we'll see how this guy works, but we'll see. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into the aesthetic. I like the overall look. These colors are nice and saturated. Paint job's not perfect, but it is decent. Especially given the white paint that's usually pretty hard, white and yellow. You can see it's not perfect, there's some blemishes here and there, but overall he is pretty saturated and looks pretty good. There's no shading anywhere, which I think is unfortunate. It would have gone a long way on this guy, especially given the kind of high price point. But it's not bad. The only thing that really stands out as ugly to me is the wrist area, where they have this wrist swivel. It's not great. And then when you actually use the wrist swivel, it breaks the sculpt of the gauntlet, so I think they could have handled that a little bit better. But it's not bad. You can see mostly it looks really good. The face is clean. No problem there. Let me focus. There we go. Yeah, face is clean. It's not a bad looking figure by any means, and the primary colors being so saturated, that's a nice look too. I like it. But yeah, it looks solid. No problem there. The sculpt work is definitely stylized. I mean, the design original, the character design himself is stylized, and then Revoltech did their thing to it too, so I can't really comment on it too much other than it's pretty consistent. His chest is kind of small, given the rest of the size of his body. His thighs are huge, but it's very stylized, and I don't think it's a bad look. I think they got a pretty good design philosophy going on here. So, not bad. Not bad, I'll take it. Skin's a little orange maybe, but Love the hand sculpts, very nice and detailed. So yeah, it's aesthetically pretty good. I don't think it's as bad in a neutral pose as some of their figures are. It's kind of hard to get his arms to do what you want them to do and look good doing it, but it's not terrible. So aesthetically speaking, I'm going to give this guy probably an 8 objectively. Subjectively, I think there's way too many cuts and things, but like I said, we're not going to get into that. Objectively, this is what they're going for, and I think they hit it pretty well on the head. All right. Okay, as far as articulation, nope. As far as accessories go, we have a total of 4 faces. The smiling head that comes on him in the package, another smiling head with like a sweat drop. I guess that's supposed to be a sweat drop on the side there. An angry head, and then an angry head with a little bit of blood coming out of his mouth. Pretty good head sculpts there. You do get a couple sets of eyes. So they each all obviously come with a set of eyes in the head, and then you have 2 more eyes that have like the little pupil glint or whatever you want to call it. On different sides, so you can swap those out. I don't know if I would ever bother on this guy. You can't see them. You can't see them at all unless you're doing photography or are up close. So it's cool to have them though. Alright, and then for hands, you get the 2 fist hands that come on them in the package. Then you get 1 thumbs up hand, 2 pointing finger hands, 2 peace or victory sign hands, 2 more sets of open hands, and then a couple of karate chop style hands. Very good sculpts, lots of options. I like that a whole bunch. You do get a little tool, by the way, for swapping out the eyes if you need to do that. They are not articulated, just to be clear. They are swappable, though. All right. You also get an effect part, which is 3 pieces that can be connected into one, which is nice, and that's for some poses. And then you can also separate them and use them for like dash effects, like for his feet or whatever, and you get little hinges and a little clear piece to do that if you want to do that. So that's a nice touch. I like it. And then you do get a display stand also, which is a good one. Nice acrylic display stand to hold him up, but it also has an upright to hold his onomatopoeias, his comic word thingies that go on there, which are pretty nicely done. So that's a good spread of accessories. Revoltech's one of the better companies when it comes to that kind of stuff. I am going to go 9, or maybe 9.5, you can pick, doesn't matter, out of 10 for the accessories. I think it's nice that the effect parts turn into 1 piece or multiple pieces. I think they could have probably just given you 1 piece and then separate pieces so they look a little bit more purposeful rather than kind of Lego-y, but still a good spread of accessories. All right, for articulation, they do have some of the updated things on here and some things that I don't care for, but let's see how it works. Double ball peg for the head to the neck, which is not bad. His hair gets in the way quite a bit though, so you're not going to get a ton of range out of it. It's not bad at all. Wow, okay. I barely touched that hair and it broke right off. Look at that. Well, that's not good material. I barely touched it. For something that sticks up like that, it needs to be at least somewhat flexible. Okay. Lovely. All right. So yeah, the head doesn't pose as well as you might like. It leans up pretty well, but not down too much. Side to side is pretty limited also. The hair really gets in the way, and you can't even really rotate the head on the neck. The neck is on a ball peg though, so that'll rotate, and that leans forward pretty well. It doesn't go back too much, but the neck does, so I mean the top of the neck, so that works out pretty well, I guess. Leaning side to side is okay. So yeah, those things in combination, not too bad. For the shoulders, they have this thing going on again, which is okay, I guess. It doesn't really add that much, so I'm not sure it's worth having the cuts in the chest and the big cut in the neck and everything. This one's a ball peg, so it rocks a little bit, so you can kind of make it fit better, but I'm not sure it really offers that much. All it does is change the location of the shoulder, so if you want to bring the arm across the chest, you can lean it forward, and I like the way that it moves the lats to make it look kind of cool, and it fills this out, but it doesn't actually bring the arm across the chest very well. You can see. If you go up here, it's a little bit better. You can bring it up there. But it's still, like I said, I just don't think it's enough, given how ugly and goofy the cuts are and everything. And then let's talk about the shoulder joint. We have the little ball hinge up here that raises the whole arm, so you get this giant cavity. It's not the absolute worst version of this type of joint I've seen, but it is very ugly. And on this one, unlike Thor, the shoulder itself is on a little ball peg, so it's like a flap that just moves around. But it doesn't really move around too much other than to lift up when you do that. So again, I think it's just, they're trying to give you something here, but what you're sacrificing to get that, it's just not justified because they're not really giving it to you enough. It's just not really there. So yeah, that's the ball hinge there. Then you get a little ball peg where the arm connects to that, which, yeah, there's technically more range, but is it actually functional and useful? it's okay. Like, you can put the shoulder to use in some ways, but it's just, to me, not worth the trade-off. And that's more objective even than subjective, because it doesn't have that good of range. Not really. All right, and that's actually your bicep swivel also, which means it's going to get really cumbersome to try to pose this guy. You have the ball hinge in the elbow, which gives you really good range if you do it all the way, but you get the gap in here. So if you want to get rid of that, you have to bring the arm that way, which only gives you 90 degrees. And that ball will allow some rotation also. But between the two, you just have an awkward bicep area that doesn't rotate properly. So can he pose? Yes. Is it going to look good doing it? Not really. You have to really be okay with weird broken anatomy and lots of cuts and things to make the argument there. All right, so let's straighten his arm out. And his wrists, little ball hinges, those work nice. That's fine. You get to rotate this piece, which is useful because of the shape of his gauntlet, having this little like fin thing right here. It's somewhat useful, but also looks really ugly. So again, trade-off. All right, for the torso, I love that they don't use the old joints anymore. It's just a couple of ball pegs in there. This piece and this piece, they move around pretty well. He can lean over nicely. He can lean back pretty well, side to side. No real issues there. Rotation, that's fine. Floating belt is floaty. So yeah, the torso works pretty nicely. No problems there. For the hips, big old ball sockets. Can't really see in there too well. They don't work as well as I would have thought. They go out to the side pretty far. Like, it's good range. I'm just saying, for Revoltech, I would have expected a little bit more, but pretty good range out there. Almost full on splits. Going forward, though, pretty limited. Like, you can go out to the side some, but going straight up forward is not particularly good on this guy. Going back, you get almost nothing. You do get a thigh swivel right here, but it mostly just rotates on the main hip ball. So be aware of that. And the thigh swivel, you can force it to work, but it's at a steep angle. And I know they do that on purpose to try to give you extra range for things like that. I'm not a huge fan of that because it looks weird. You end up with more meat down here than you should have, and it breaks the sculpt. But you do have that if you want it. So again, it's a trade-off. You have to decide if it's worth it. Personally, I'm not a fan. Objectively, I'm kind of neutral because it's technically working, but also kind of ugly, so I don't know. For the knees on this guy, sometimes they do this design and it works really well. Other times it works not well at all, and I think that's one of these times. Or this is one of those times. It looks decent enough in a neutral, but you get these lumps. And then also when you bend it, you have decent range, that's fine, but you get this. Why do they do that? He's not wearing knee pads. That looks silly. This is not one of their better examples of a knee. It's functional enough, sure, but it is not good looking. Then for the boot swivel, it's actually a ball peg, so that moves around forward and back mostly. A little bit of rotation, not a ton. All right, for the ankles, ball hinge with a ball peg. Instead of a straight peg in the foot, it's a ball peg. So you get a little bit of extra play. You can bring the foot farther back because of that, and also farther forward. Still not that far forward, but pretty good. Ankle rocker works perfectly because it's a ball hinge, so no issues there. Toe hinge, sculpted perfectly. That is the way to do it. The full thickness of the foot is the hinge, so it's nice and smooth. Perfect sculpt. Too soft, though. It's not going to hold the figure very well, but it's there, and it's well enough placed, so pretty good. Okay, so final verdict for the articulation. Does it pose pretty well? Yeah, mostly. Does it pose well enough given the weird kibbly nature, weird Lego pile nature of the figure? I'm still going to say no, especially I think this one's actually a little bit worse than Thor. I only referenced Thor because I just reviewed him recently. I think this guy came out before Thor, if I remember correctly. It's not bad. I mean, even for a Revoltech, the ugliness is not bad, but for a Revoltech, the posability is not great. So I'm going to give it only a 7 for them. It's somewhere in the middle of where they should be, I think, and the worst things they make. So it's not... It's a 7. I'm going to leave it at a 7 for the articulation. And now it's time for the final verdict. Does this figure hit that right spot for you to want to collect it? That's totally up to you, but for me, as objective as I can make it, I'm going to say it's just a 7. His accessories are awesome, but his posability and the overall aesthetic, I should say the posability is not good enough to justify the sacrifice in the aesthetic. Some of the parts it's fine, obviously, but especially in the shoulder area, you just don't get enough. You don't get enough. For having a tiny chest and all this crazy shoulder stuff going on, he can't do a lot of the poses you would expect him to be able to do, like even bringing his arm around his chest. It just doesn't work, so what's the point? So yeah, it's not the right trade-off as far as I can tell objectively, and certainly not subjectively. But for a Revoltech figure, I'm going to give him an overall rating, including the awesome accessories and the overall pretty good finish, 7 out of 10. If you're into Revoltech, it's a fine pickup. If you're not, this is not the one to draw you in, I don't think. A lot of good things about it, but the bad things about it are there too, and I just don't, especially with the broken hair. I don't even know if I should count that. I barely... That is the most brittle plastic for something like that. Goodness. Alright, well, like I said, it's a 7. It's not the best figure by any means, but it's okay if you're into this sort of thing, and I'm wondering what you guys think, so let me know in the comment section below. But that's it from me, so thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down, and if you haven't subscribed, you should. I have new videos almost every single day, and thousands already on the channel, so make sure you come back for all of that. And in the meantime, keep collecting.